Probably gotten super inspired by all these different artists out there, but when you try and draw like them, your art ends up looking completely different to how you envisioned it. I was in the same situation not long ago, and I'm going to show you exactly what I did to take my paintings from this to this. So I'll give you the 3 topics of knowledge you need to practice in sequential order, which will allow you to improve. I'll also give you some good books that you can read to learn more about each of the topics and exercises you can do to start actually seeing results. So number 1, facial anatomy. You probably expected this because no matter what kind of art you want to create, whether stylized or realistic, you need to understand how the face works in order to make your paintings look convincing. To learn this, I recommend you read Drawing the Head and Hands and study the Asara head. If you read this short book, you're going to gain more knowledge about drawing a face than 20 YouTube videos combined. I know you probably don't want to because it might be boring, but you can't ignore the value if you really want to improve. So this brings us to the first exercise. What we want to do is start thinking of the face in simple shapes and imprint the Asara head into our memory. So once you've read Drawing the Head and Hands, you'll know to represent the face with a sphere that has been cut through to represent the side of the head. What I'm doing here is just drawing up some green guidelines and also finding the landmarks. I'm representing the eye area and the nose with simple shapes and just blocking out where I think the cheekbones are. You can also see me moving my sketch over to the reference just so I can check that everything is proportionate. When we do the eyes, we also use a sphere to show them. You'll actually know how to do this if you do read the book as well. I'm also representing the lips in a simple way too. Then we'll erase everything and we'll come back and do the sketch again, but this time we'll try and really think about the planes. So I've got my Asara head open on the other screen and I'm just trying to think about where all those planes would be, and it helps that we traced over before so I can have a little bit more of an educated guess. Also, notice in the reference the guy's mouth is slightly open, but we don't care about that here. The whole purpose of this exercise is not to get his complete likeness, but rather just try and get an understanding of the planes and think about the face in 3-dimensional forms and shapes. So now I'm going to do another erase, and then this is my last pass. I'm just going to be thinking about line weight and put my lines where they should be in order to make the sketch actually look like a sketch and not a robot. I'm still going to keep my planes a little bit erased out, but I want them to be visible so that when I start painting this later, I'll know exactly where to separate the shadow from the light. I recommend you do this exercise with only male references for now, just because they have more structural features, so it'll help you identify the planes better. And also, you want to be doing this breaking down the planes exercise with different types of head angles. Just keep your references black and white as well for now, because we really want to make sure that we start learning how to identify value. And your final product from this exercise should look a little something like this. Don't worry if your sketches don't look like this yet. With more practice, you'll be able to be more confident with breaking down the planes. You probably will need to do this with about 20, 30, even 50 references just to get the hang of it, assuming you're a complete beginner. Now that we've got a good grasp of facial anatomy, the next step is to understand values. Values refer to the lightness or darkness of different parts of the portrait. This is crucial because it helps add depth and 3-dimensionality to your artwork, making it look more realistic. To start with values, I recommend you use black and white references and get used to identifying local color for your own painting. Local color just refers to the natural color of an object without influence of light. Alrighty, so when I'm doing this study, I'm just looking at which planes are in shadow, so I'm trying to block them out, and it's useful that we have that sketch from earlier, right? Also notice that when I'm trying to create a transition, like for example under his eye, I'm just using a darker color and I'm moving it down with the round brush, and then I'm picking my lighter tone and pushing it back up, which creates this smooth transition, which saves a lot of time. I continue to pick out where the darker shadows are, and now I'm just trying to sort of define the edges and figure out, which planes and which areas have a hard edge from a drop shadow and which planes have a soft edge, We know something has a soft edge when the form is turning, and something has a hard edge when a shadow is being cast. Like, for example, right under his jaw, there's a bit of a hard shadow because the jaw is casting a shadow on the neck, and then with the cheek, there is a soft shadow that's transitioning into light because the form is turning. So now, as you can see, I'm starting to add the light and trying to create a nice transition between where my shadows are and where my light is. Also, as I progress with this portrait, I'm just going to completely get rid of the plain sketch that I had before. That smudging technique that I talked about with transitions is also something I'm using to do the hair, and that really helps just create the illusion of highlights and just gets that part of the painting out of the way quickly. Also, if you feel like some of the proportions of your painting are looking a bit off, don't be afraid to use the liquify tool just to change things around. So you'll notice I'll be doing that while I'm doing my own portrait, as well as flipping the canvas so I can always have a new perspective. Also, if you're really struggling with this exercise, don't worry about lowering the opacity of your sketch. Just keep it at 100% and just try and figure out which planes are in shadow and light like it's a jigsaw puzzle. When I started doing these black and white portraits, it would take me around at least 3 hours to complete, but now since I've practiced it so much, I can get it done in about an hour or less. So don't worry about how much time you're taking right now, just try and really figure out which planes are in shadow and which planes are in light. When you're doing these exercises, all you need to use is a round brush. And as you're doing your paintings, I recommend that you start finding some cool artists and how they handle doing their black and white portraits, just so you can understand how they simplify things and apply that to your own paintings. And just like with the previous exercise, it's going to take you at least like 40 to 80 paintings just to get a really good solid understanding. It's a lot more than with the sketching because, you know, the concepts that you need to start mastering are going to be a bit harder and they're all going to compound on top of each other. After you've implemented the first 2 steps, you'll start noticing your portraits taking more 3-dimensional shape and they'll start appearing more realistic. Assuming that you've mastered the previous steps and you can create a convincing looking black and white portrait, it's time to get onto color. If you're starting out, the previous steps would have required a dedicated effort, around 1 to 3 months of consistent work, just to establish a foundational understanding. So building upon your previous knowledge of values and form, all you need to do now is start implementing color theory. So there are some really good books on color theory that helped me deepen my understanding, and I have those on screen now. As you progress, set the color cube aside. In order to understand color, you need to know the 3 factors that affect it, which are hue, saturation, and brightness, and for that, we use HSB sliders. One crucial lesson I've learned is that color is relative, so you can't gauge the accuracy of a color just by looking at it in isolation. The interplay of all colors matters, as they influence each other. So here's a quick tip. Apply all your colors over your initial sketch. This way you can ensure the accuracy of each color and confirm that their values harmonize effectively. So you can do this by also just switching your canvas to black and white to see how the colors match up. For now though, just know that shadows generally shift towards the warmer side and areas in light tend to be cooler. However, depending on the lighting scenario, the opposite could happen. Also, you need to be thinking about subsurface scattering when you're painting people. So this means adding some red translucency on certain parts of the face to show the flesh under it. If you don't do this, your paintings are going to look dead. If practicing these things on a face isn't going too well for you, don't be afraid to start doing some still lifes, just so you can focus on color and ignore trying to draw all the facial features. That's what I actually did to start out, and it helped me progress to drawing faces in color after that. Lastly, remember that the light source dramatically alters our perception of color. So to gain a good understanding of these concepts, I recommend delving into those books that I recommended and doing some additional research outside of this video, because color is one of the most complex topics of art that you're gonna encounter. So that's about it for this video. Sorry if my explanations sounded a bit rushed. I tried to fit in as much info as I could in around 10 minutes, but later on I can do more detailed explanations of different art concepts as I learn them. But yeah, this is my first YouTube video, so let me know what you think.